Welcome to the deep dive. We know there's just a flood of news out there every single day. It's overwhelming. So here, we cut through all that noise, all the raw information, to really get to the core of what's happening globally. Our mission, simple. Distill it down, find those crucial nuggets of knowledge, and give you a shortcut to being genuinely well-informed. Maybe with a few surprises along the way. Today, we're diving into the top 10 global news headlines from roughly the past 10 hours. This is as of August 1st, 2025. And you know how headlines can feel sometimes, just disconnected, like random puzzle pieces. Well, our goal here is to actually connect those pieces, find the surprising links, the ripple effects you might miss. So the big question we're exploring today is, with the world seemingly bracing for more economic protectionism, who adapts? Who struggles? And maybe what unexpected opportunities pop up? We'll use today's headlines to kind of peel back those layers.
Yeah, and that's a really good way to frame it because it's fascinating how quickly a policy decision, just one announcement, can send these huge shockwaves globally. Today's news cycle is completely dominated by this major economic shift. Started hitting the wires just a few hours ago. And it impacts, everything, markets, big companies, and eventually people's daily lives.
Okay, so let's jump right into the really big one. The news that sent those immediate shockwaves. Former President Trump has unleashed sweeping new tariffs. We're talking, what, 68 to 92 countries?
Oh, that's a range reported, yeah. It's broad.
And the rates go from 10% up to 41%. That's huge. When you look at the details, what really jumps out, Canada's looking at 35%.
Right.
India and Taiwan, 25%. And then Switzerland, kind of out of left field, hit with 39%.
Yeah.
This really escalates the whole trade war talk, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The sheer scale of it, both the number of countries and those rates, it's pretty unprecedented, especially hitting longtime allies like Canada or, a neutral financial center like Switzerland so hard. This isn't just tweaking trade rules. It forces a strategic rethink for, well, companies all over the world. And the markets. They reacted instantly, profoundly.
Okay, how bad was it?
Well, U.S. futures are already down, about 0.9%?
Yeah.
So a lot of bearish feeling before the markets even open there. And across the pond and in Asia, European and Asian stocks tumbled pretty significantly. The Stoxx 600, the big European benchmark, hit lows we haven't seen in a month.
Wow.
So yeah, these aren't just numbers flashing on a screen. These are real bearish shockwaves hitting global markets. Investors are basically bracing themselves. They're trying to figure out what's next, what this means for supply chains that are so deeply interconnected.
That sounds like a really grim outlook for a lot of places. So what are the immediate tangible impacts? What are we seeing on the ground already for specific companies or nations?
Well, we're already seeing reactions.
You mentioned the Bank of Japan, the BOJ. They're already putting out warnings.
Right, exactly. They're saying flat out these U.S. tariffs. They're going to cut into Japanese corporate profits. They're going to delay capital spending. Those big export-heavy firms over there, they're clearly getting ready to tighten their belts, expecting a much weaker profit outlook.
And we're seeing tech stocks hit hard, too, like in South Korea and Taiwan.
Definitely. Tech is very sensitive to these kinds of trade disruptions and potential cost increases.
Is there any upside here? Are there any sectors or maybe even countries that could, paradoxically, maybe benefit from this? Or is it just bad news across the board?
Well, that's a tough one. It's mostly a net negative, especially for anyone really reliant on exporting to the U.S. market. But if you look closely, maybe industries or countries that can quickly pivot, focus on their domestic market. Or, maybe their products suddenly look cheaper compared to imports facing these huge tariffs. There might be some niche advantages. Yeah. But right now, the overwhelming feeling is caution, anticipating contraction, especially for trade-dependent economies.
Right.
And it's not just stocks reacting, is it? Even commodities like oil are telling part of the story.
Yeah, I saw that. Brent and WTI crude, they're actually steadying. After an initial dip, that seems almost counterintuitive with all this market panic.
It does, yeah.
So it's like a tug of war happening there.
Exactly. It tells you traders are doing a careful balancing act. They're weighing, higher import costs from tariffs, which could definitely hurt demand for fuel.
All right.
But they're also looking at the ongoing threats to Russian crude supplies. That geopolitical risk is still very much there.
Ah, okay. So the instability in energy markets is kind of propping prices up, or at least steadying them, against the bad economic news from the tariffs.
Precisely. It adds this whole other layer of complexity.
Okay, but amidst all this pretty aggressive trade action, there was one kind of fascinating diplomatic sidestep, wasn't there? Thailand and Cambodia, they accepted a reduced U.S. tariff. 19%.
Yeah, that was an interesting development.
And that came after some kind of ceasefire was brokered. They avoided a much higher threatened rate, like 36%.
That's right. It shows that even in this really charged atmosphere, sometimes targeted diplomacy can still find a way through.
It's a really interesting exception to the bigger trend we're seeing.
It absolutely is. It highlights that, every single trade relationship is different. Unique leverage points, different negotiation dynamics, especially for smaller economies. Sometimes you see these slightly surprising outcomes.
Makes sense. Okay, so obviously these economic shifts, the tariffs, that's the huge story from the last 10 hours. But it's important we don't lose sight of other really significant things happening globally, things impacting lives right now. Let's maybe shift focus for a moment. What else stood out from the headlines in the past few hours? Other critical events?
Well, sadly, the human cost of conflict continues. It's just tragic. Russian missile and drone attacks. They killed 28 people in Kyiv, including, heartbreakingly, a 2-year-old child. It's a stark reminder that civilian casualties are still mounting in Ukraine.
Just awful. And another global challenge that keeps cropping up in the news is migration, right?
Indeed. On a different front, there's news that the U.S. State Department is looking at spending potentially around $7.85 million. And this is to fund deportations from Costa Rica. It signals a revival, really, of a migrant removal initiative that drew criticism before, reminiscent of some earlier U.S. policies. It just highlights the ongoing, very complex challenges in managing regional migration flows.
And staying on that humanitarian angle, there was news out of Gaza, too.
Yes, quite critical news. A U.S. envoy visited Gaza specifically to inspect aid distribution. This comes after really mounting international criticism about, famine conditions and tragically rising death tolls from hunger in the region.
So even while the world is reeling from economic news, these other crises, they're unfolding right alongside it.
Absolutely. They might seem disconnected from the trade story on the surface, but they underscore the complex and often very dire humanitarian situations happening concurrently.
Okay, now here's something fascinating, almost a counter-narrative maybe. A potential blueprint for how to be resilient in this kind of climate. Germany's Lind, the global industrial gas giant.
Big player.
They actually beat their Q2 earnings expectations amidst all this tariff talk and economic gloom. That's surprising, right? A success story.
It absolutely is surprising. And their success right in the middle of this tariff storm, it offers a really crucial insight, I think.
What did they say was the key?
Well, they cited pricing strength and productivity gains, which sounds standard, maybe.
Okay.
But if you dig a bit deeper, their success really points to a business model that isn't perhaps as reliant on just one single export market like the U.S. They have very diversified global operations, long-term contracts for essential products. Industrial gases are pretty fundamental.
Right. You can't just easily switch suppliers for that stuff.
Exactly. It shows that having that kind of strategic resilience, a really unique, almost indispensable value proposition, it can allow companies not just to survive these shocks, but maybe even thrive. It speaks to those fundamental strengths that just make them more adaptable when the global landscape shifts rapidly.
So as you can really start to see, all these headlines, they might seem separate when you first glance at them, but they're deeply intertwined. And our goal with this deep dive really was to show you how they connect, what these seemingly disparate events actually mean for the bigger picture. So bringing it all together now, what we've really seen today is the just profound and immediate impact of these sweeping new tariffs. They are clearly the central economic force driving so many of today's headlines. And it just demonstrates how quickly, how broadly these big policy shifts affect global markets, hit specific nations, and force changes in corporate strategy.
Yeah, and I think this deep dive has shown not just those immediate ripple effects, the market drops and the company warnings, but also that intricate interconnectedness, how seemingly unrelated global challenges like trade disputes and humanitarian crises are actually linked. In a world where information just flashes around instantly, understanding these complex interactions, that's really the key, isn't it? To make sense of it all, to cut through the noise.
We really hope this look at today's headlines has given you a clear, concise, but also deeply informative perspective. Something that helps you feel truly well-informed about events that are definitely going to shape the next few weeks and months, hopefully without feeling totally overwhelmed by it all.
And maybe just one final thought, a provocative one for you to consider, sort of building on that Lind example we talked about. Despite all the market shock, the widespread corporate concern that we've discussed, the fact is, some companies, some entities can adapt. They can even thrive when there's major global disruption. So it raises this important question for you. As the global economy tries to navigate this, well, unprecedented wave of tariffs, these geopolitical pressures, what are the fundamental strategies? What inherent strengths are going to be the most crucial? Crucial for nations, for industries, not just to kind of weather the storm, but to actually innovate, to find new paths forward in what's clearly becoming a rapidly changing world order.
That's a great question to chew on. Keep that curiosity alive, keep exploring these really critical global dynamics.